Dear viewers, I hope you're all enjoying the Battle for Bikini Bottom review and your day. It's been a fun ride. Since the world decided everything was officially back to normal, I figured I'd go to the beach with my homies before the next review. You guys can make yourselves comfortable until then. There's water in the living room and game systems in the fridge. Don't touch my copy of Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness though. I'll rip off your nipples if you do. I also made you a cake. Love, Benson.
I thought America was part of the world.
Sorry guys, it's just not really worth risking at this point. I thought we were part of the Getting Better Club. Look, I get you guys were excited, but it still isn't worth risking. I'm sorry. Plus, I have a channel to look after now. That takes up a lot of my time. Okay, so where do you think we exactly go that isn't crowded? We can't go to private beaches, we're poor. I mean, remember the last time we crossed in a Hampton Beach from Salisbury by accident? Frank hasn't been the same since. Okay, look here, mister. I don't even know why we're friends in the first place. You contribute nothing but negative thoughts to the group. You know what? That's better. I mean, I guess I should work on reviews, but Rehydrated isn't out yet, and I can't do anything until... Holy shit, has it already been out that long? Okay, I guess I should review Rehydrated then, but I can't exactly review it until I buy... the sauce! Oh!
So, Rehydrated? Rehydrated is a remake of Battle for Bikini Bottom that released this year on June 23rd and is a platforming game involving everyone's favorite kitchen tool. I've already talked about Spongebob and his exploration into the video game world in my review of Battle for Bikini Bottom, so if you haven't watched it already, there will be a portal at the end of the video and a link in the description below whenever you want to jump right into it. As I've made a review, you can see all my points for the original game in that video, so I'll just talk about them briefly before we continue so we have some context. I love Battle for Bikini Bottom. I played it a ton when I was a kid, and playing it again was a complete treat from start to finish. However, there are more noticeable negatives that, while they don't completely ruin the experience for me, keep it from being one of the greatest platformers out there. Looking at you, Kelp Forest. It's a harmless 3D platformer slash collectathon that is fun to play, and despite my praise for it and calling it one of my favorite games out there, there's nothing too big that makes it stand out from the other members of its class. The fun of the game comes from exploring the many locations of the SpongeBob universe and the fact that it's written as if it could be an early season episode, meaning that the humor and direction is top notch and enjoyable. SpongeBob fans like myself are sure to enjoy the game, and even if you aren't completely into SpongeBob, you're sure to have fun regardless because of how exciting it is to play. It's basically baby's first collectathon, but that doesn't mean it's bad. Travel in time 17 years later, and a remake for the game comes along. SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, Rehydrated. Developed by Purple Lamp Studios, so the game takes what we know and love about the original and just pushes it somewhere else where a new generation of gamers can enjoy it. This comes with all the bells and whistles, including new graphics and even the promise of cut content, such as Robot Squidward and a multiplayer mode. The game's been out almost a month at this point, and yeah, reception was just as I expected. Much like the original game, Rehydrated has received mediocre to bad reception from critics and absolute praise from fans. In a way, I feel like critic reception feels kind of bullshit because some reviewers have been harsh talking about the game, comparing it to Crash and Spyro's remakes with talking about how more should have been done, even though Purple Lamp has come out and said that the game is just the same game from nearly 2 decades ago, but with graphics overhaul and the multiplayer mode I mentioned before. They didn't want to change too much because they want to give longtime fans the remake they've been waiting for, and that means just updating the game for current consoles while fixing some complaints along the way. It doesn't help either that the studio lost a few months of progress due to the world getting down with the sickness, and so patches are being released soon to polish things up here and there, so some reviews and their criticism could be patched out by now. All of this aside, I'm excited to get my hands on the game to say the least, and apparently, the world is ready also. I had to wait the day after release to get the game because every store in my area, except for a single Walmart 10 minutes away, didn't have a copy. The fuck is that about, guys?
Now, before we begin the review, I want to clarify a few things. The first being is that I will be playing the Xbox One version of the game instead of the Switch for 2 different reasons. The first being is that I can now add playing SpongeBob games on a console of each major company to my list of useless things on my resume. The second being is that I've heard a lot of negative things about the Switch, such as graphical issues and issues with the game overall, so if I want to get this review out on time before Paper Mario the Origami King, I have to play the best version that I can find. The second thing is that I'm playing this with the Day 1 patch, meaning that some small issues are fixed, but not all. So anything I say that's a nitpick or a serious issue could be patched in down the line, so take that with a grain of salt if you will. And finally, this isn't going to be a standard review. Instead of trying to see if the game is good or not, we're going to look and see if this is the definitive way to play Battle for Bikini Bottom. I've already made a review on the original game, and if you've watched it, you know how much I love it. And this is essentially the same package minus a few bells and whistles. So instead of going over every little thing, we're going to look over what's positive and what's negative about Rehydrated, whether it's a change or something that was kept from the original. Keep in mind too that I'm going to be talking about both versions, so for context, I'm going to call Battle for Bikini Bottom BFBB, and I'm going to call Rehydrated, well, Rehydrated, just so that way you know which one I'm talking about. With all the context said and done, guys, I hope you're ready because this is Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated.
Let's start off with the good in the game, and I don't think I'll shock anyone when I say this. My god. The game's fucking gorgeous. Purple Lamp is a small studio, but holy shit did they put work in when it comes to the graphics. BFBB looks just fine for the most part, but this game is even more colorful and appealing to the eyes. Due to hardware updates, you can even see more of the worlds before you enter them from the hub, which just makes the entire game come alive and excites you for what you're bound to see next. For example, you can see the ships that are part of the Flying Dutchman's graveyard all the way from Spongebob's house, and whether this is your first time playing the game or not, it's beautiful to look at. It makes you excited for what's next even before you enter the levels, but once you do, it's so much better. What I loved about BFBB is that each level was unique and colorful, faithfully sticking to the charm of the SpongeBob cartoon. In Rehydrated, you can clearly see the love for these levels and the world as a whole because it's just so gorgeous to look at in every level, and I mean... In regards to what levels look the best, I would say Jellyfish Fields, Rock Bottom, Flying Dutchman's Graveyard, and SpongeBob's Dream. Rock Bottom and SpongeBob's Dream being the pinnacle in my opinion. Rock Bottom looks more Lovecraftian than before, and the use of purple hues just adds to the mystery of the world. The museum got a complete overhaul too, featuring paintings of the cast that mock paintings in the real world, adding more goofy SpongeBob pizzazz that we know and love. Wait, hold on a second. Are these fish people in the museum? Did the museum make models of Bikini Bottom citizens? That's a little weird. Wait, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy too? Okay, that's kind of creepy. Why don't we just keep moving along and... Wait, did I just see one of those models move? Oh my god, I fucking did. They're moving! Are these actual fish people in cases? Sandy and Patrick too? Are you telling me that all of these aren't just statues, but actual fish people trapped by the denizens of Rock Bottom? What the fuck? This is creepier than anything the original game had, including... Oh! Fuck! Wait, hold on a second. He doesn't look that scary. Ooh. Ah! Why? As for SpongeBob's Dream, this is the definitive way to experience the level. BFBB's take on it is still amazing, don't get me wrong, but Rehydrated's version is so much better. The general level is a bright blue and there are clouds everywhere, making it even more dreamlike as you float from each character's dream. Sandy's dream is a masterpiece. 5-star meal for the eyes. God damn! Everything looks better, from the starry night in the skull to what is in the background floating around Texas as you slide to the acorn. It's just amazing. The game looks so gorgeous, I can't stop gushing about it. Bravo to Purple Lamp Studios for how they made this game look. Sticking to the graphics, the character models look much better in Rehydrated and feel so alive. I mentioned in my last review how cinematic cutscenes were alright, but that the in-game dialogue models look stiff, particularly SpongeBob, Plankton, and Mr. Krabs. Well, I'm happy to report that they all look just like they do in the show. Finally! Mr. Krabs finally got some sleep, Plankton doesn't look like shit, literally, and SpongeBob decided not to go down the Kim Sponge-Dashian route with Botox and looks like himself. The other character models look just as amazing, and they all have added motions that make them stand out even more instead of just opening or closing a mouth. For example, SpongeBob will sometimes stick his hand up while he's excited for something or tries to be heroic, and Patrick will look horrified sometimes, like when he's stuck on the slopes of Sand Mountain instead of just being mildly inconvenienced. This may not seem important in a world where games like Horizon Zero Dawn or Jedi Fallen Order exist, but for a remake of a GameCube game based on a cartoon that has nothing but charm and standout charisma from its characters, this is important, and Rehydrated nails it in every way. Another thing to note about the models is that when dialogue calls for them to be holding something, they actually do, and it makes it even funnier. For example, SpongeBob is holding a ton of stamps when talking to Bubble Buddy about how to get into the museum, and Patrick is holding the golden spatula in his dream, which makes the gag better, honestly. The most I can say that's bad in terms of the models for now is that Mermaid Man went from Demon Jaw to Googly-Eyed Wonder, and even then, I don't mind it. I actually find it hilarious in a good way, to be honest. They kept the voices for Mr. Krabs and Mermaid Man from the original game, so the eyes mixed with the voice makes it feel like a bootleg Mermaid Man toy you'd find in the thrift store, and it's pretty funny when you think of it that way. Speaking of the audio, the recorded dialogue and music is exactly the same as before, which is a big plus. I feel like re-recording lines, especially with the voice actors for Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, Ernest Borgnine and Tim Conway having passed away, rest in peace, would take away from the delivery of the lines at BFBB. If you ask me, the lines were delivered perfectly, and if you have watched any of the cast doing scenes from the early seasons during quarantine on social media, they're delivered differently and feel slightly off. Keeping the original soundtrack of recordings just further pushes what the developers wanted to do. Simply update the game for longtime fans, and I think doing this with the audio expands on that idea. Another positive about the audio is that sound mixing is great. Sound effects don't drown out each other or the music, and a great example of that is Jellyfish Field's Waterfall. Have a listen. It's simple polishes and tune-ups like that go a long way in making a proper remake of a game, and it's definitely underappreciated, I feel like. Audio and visuals are great and all, but this is a video game. How does controlling the cast feel? I'm happy to report that for the most part, the 3 characters control well. There are some things I'll cover in the negative section, but generally speaking, the platforming for each of them is just as tight as satisfying as BFBB, and the combat is handled exceptionally. The combat in Rehydrated feels a lot snappier compared to BFBB. I don't know how to explain it, but the original just feels floatier and more laid back in a way. Like no matter what you do, you're going to make it out of the fight. In Rehydrated, the combat feels heavier and focused, meaning that your attacks are precise, and because of this, requires you to pay more attention to the robots instead of just throwing out an attack without a care in the world. This doesn't mean that the game is more challenging though. It still is meant to be a kid's game, so for me who's not only played the original but also as a grown adult, it isn't challenging at all. The need to pay attention to how close you are to robots in combat for a precise hit will add a bit more challenge for children, which is great. Kids shouldn't have to be treated like they won't know what they're doing in a game. They're smarter than some adults out there. Other small touches to the combat that I really appreciate is the fact that Sandy can lasso in the air, meaning that she can go from a glide into a lasso at a robot from far away if she wants, making her arsenal even more impressive and continuing to show why she is the best of the 3 characters no matter what version you play. Patrick gets to do his basic attack in the air, which makes his character a bit better to use during combat. It is a nice tweak to add to our dummy thick comrade. And then there's the cruise bubble, and I have seen a lot of people say they don't like how it controls, but I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I kind of think it's better to handle here than the original game. It doesn't just go fast out of the gates like in BFBB. It takes a second and then builds up speed, so that way if you need to adjust its path, you can. All around though, the combat is amazing and still just as exciting to go through. The combat isn't the only thing that is noticeably heavier and polished. The robots and bosses feel much more aggressive, particularly the bosses. This is another case of Rehydrated taking something BFBB did really well and making it even better. Mostly. The models for Robot, Sandy, Plankton, and SpongeBob all look even more robotic in this game, and they move like it too. This isn't a jab at BFBB's designs, they're fantastic too, but they don't move particularly like robots. They move and act like the characters with a few bolts and metal pieces painted on them. In Rehydrated, however, they went above and beyond for the boss designs and battles. Robot Sandy's tail, for example, is on fire, and she runs at you stiff as a board instead of just slowly pacing around the arena, a detail that just adds to the atmosphere of already memorable robots. The studio even added these robotic characterizations to the battles themselves as they go by much quicker. In my other review, I talked about how the bosses, while memorable, dragged on sometimes, and that's because their attacks can feel slow and the time between attacks is just awkward space. If the game just cut down the attack time and made the robots move aggressively like, well, robots, they would be perfectly fine. My prayers were heard though, because the bosses are noticeably quicker and their atmosphere isn't sacrificed because of it. Look at how Robot Sandy moves and attacks much quicker in Rehydrated compared to BFBB. She feels like a killing machine rather than just a robot cosplaying as Sandy for Comic-Con. Again, I love both versions of the boss battles, but I love Rehydrated slightly more because of these touch-ups. Robot SpongeBob's karate attack is also noticeably creepier. He looks like a maniac as he screams at you. That is design done right. And speaking of Robot SpongeBob, I like the look of the final battle inside him better here than I do the original. The gears moving around, the blue lighting, the updated mechanical look to everything. It just adds to the tension of doing battle inside a robot to save your town. Back to controlling characters really quickly, sliding feels better here too, and that's only because of the turning being smoother than BFBB, my only complaint with the mechanic. I actually had to readjust myself to the sliding segments at first because I was thrown off of how nice it feels to turn while sliding, and it makes Sand Mountain more enjoyable than it already is because of this. Speaking about Sand Mountain, the time trials. BFBB had this odd choice where if you were doing a time trial and fell off the side after hitting a checkpoint on the track, you'd still have to slide down the rest of the slope, but the time trial would end and you have to teleport back up and restart it, which I found to be odd. Well, Rehydrated does away with this by using no checkpoints if you start a time trial, and if you fall off, you go back right to the beginning to restart. Thank God. Wait, hold on a second, did he just fucking dab?
This game's a 2 out of 10.
Back to the time trials though, this is an amazing fix. It's a small thing compared to every other detail in Rehydrated, but it's so appreciated because now sliding challenges actually feel like a challenge that you need to master. Especially for stuff like Larry's Trial and Kelp, wait a second.
Okay. In case you haven't guessed it by now, I'm avoiding talking about Kelp Forest because I don't want to go in it. I hate the level, and I'm sure it hates me, which is why it's so bad. It's not even just because it's dark as shit, it's because outside of Mrs. Puff's objective, every other objective is poorly made and shouldn't exist. I'm worried it's the same thing in Rehydrated, that they didn't fix a lot to make it even better. I mean, if I don't acknowledge it, it doesn't exist, right? No, I can't. Guys, we need to face our fears here. We gotta go in Kelp Forest and get this over with. Let's do this. Oh, I can see everything that's on the screen. I must have entered the wrong level, guys. Why don't we just go back and... Wait a second. This music, that scenery. Is this Kelp Forest? No way, Kelp Forest was dark. You guys remember, right? Except this is dark too. Except it's not as bad. Did they fix the lighting in Kelp Forest? We can see shit finally, guys. I think they actually did. We can fucking see. Wait a second. The main problem was the objectives, not the lighting itself. So there's still a chance that they're gonna fuck this up. Don't get your hopes up, guys. Let's just keep going.
Okay, here we go. Let's get the tikis from Mr. Krabs. There's the infamous one over there. Let me just grab this golden spatula and then we can... Wait. What the fuck? I don't remember this in the original game. What's that button for? No way. Don't tell me. There's another link for this part! Was this in the original? I certainly don't remember it in the original. Let me know in the comments if it was while I pee my pants in excitement, guys. Oh my god. The jump isn't impossible. It's actually very possible. Even if that leaf was in the original, the fact they highlight where to find it just makes it even better. It's like they don't want to piss you off. Purple Lamp Studios does care. The whole segment's actually okay. The jumps are all manageable on leaves because you could finally see shit. Wait, what else did they... What? I didn't spend hours on kelp vines? I died a few times, yeah, but that's my fault. This time around, the vines seem to be bigger, and the speed is manageable. So it's my fault, not the game's fault this time. It's not anger-inducing. And the fact that I could start all over for Murrain Man's trial instead of having to slide down constantly just makes it even better. This isn't actually that bad. Kelp Forest is actually better this time. What is this? Am I enjoying Kelp Forest more than in BFBB? No way. This feeling, these fixes to Kelp Forest, the fact I could fucking see everything, it actually doesn't look that bad. It's a miracle. A miracle of biblical proportions. I need to tell this to the whole world. Quick, everyone to Town Square. Tell your friends. Drink some kelp juice. Kelp Forest doesn't suck! Wait, hold on a second. Kelp Cave still has that one bus stop to travel back and forth to? It's still annoying. Damn it! You were so close. You were so fucking close to making Kelp Forest completely tolerable. You just needed to add one more bus stop, and Kelp Forest would be great. I still can't believe it, guys. This level is actually tolerable. Fuck everything else I just said. This is the best thing Purple Lamp Studios has done. They took a level a majority of fans hate and just made it better. Astounding, I know. I actually enjoyed my time at Kelp Forest. It might have been the alcohol talking at the time, but holy shit. If it wasn't for Kelp Caves, I might have considered this a top 5 level. I'm proud of you, Kelp Forest. You don't suck as much. What a glow up.
In terms of smaller changes that are positive, there isn't really too much to go over. And that's not a bad thing. Anything that I've said that's positive is clearly a massive improvement for Rehydrated and make it a fantastic game. And I salute the makers of the game for taking the time to do these type of things instead of just smaller things here and there. What I can say is a good thing in their favor though, is that the studio clearly loves SpongeBob and its SpongeBob memes.
Throughout the game, you'll find nods to moments in the show that either exist or have straight up become memes, such as here while you talk to Squidward in Jellyfish Fields, or Handsome Squidward in his house in Dream. I'm not gonna lie though, Handsome Squidward staring down at me is a bit distracting. Whew. Oh god, I think I need to take a cold shower, guys. All jokes aside though, finding these little nods to memes and episodes throughout the game is such a treat. They didn't have to do that, but they did, and it just adds to making this a fun and not so serious SpongeBob platformer. Phew, that is a lot of big things that make the game more enjoyable. That's really impressive for a small studio, and the rest of Rehydrated is basically the same game from 17 years ago, so I still enjoyed it all. I guess I won't have much to talk about in terms of negative. So I think it's about time that we talk about the cut content that was restored and rehydrated. When the game was first announced, we were promised cut content that was not in the original, such as the robot Squidward boss fight and more. Well, when the multiplayer trailers rolled around, we got our first look at him, and wow, he looks great. He looks super intimidating, and it looks like it'll be quite the fight. But here's the thing. He was in the multiplayer trailer, not the story trailer, not cut contents trailer of some sort. Multiplayer. That should be a red flag right there.
But whatever the case, why don't we just jump right into the multiplayer and see if it holds up, while also making sure the cut content is restored to proper quality. What? I get it. You guys don't see the cut content. That's okay. I didn't at first blush either. I'll walk you through the entire process. So this right here is definitely a nod to Muscle Bob, a sequence that was originally cut out of the entire fight with Robot Spongebob. This right here was definitely a nod to Patrick's dream, which was going to be platforming on ice cream originally. Oh, and this one's my favorite one of the bunch. This one is definitely a nod to the boardwalk that you would be walking on in Glove World, which was a cut level from BFBB. There it is. All the cut content. Restored. What?
The multiplayer. Hoo boy. Here we go. So all the cut content went to the multiplayer. The concept of it is that you battle waves of robots on these islands, many of which represent the content I mentioned before. Robot Squidward sometimes launches electrical attacks at you, and then after a few waves you step on a pad and destroy a tentacle until you destroy all of them. That's it. The beginning is even lackluster. It's literally him waking up like in the trailer, and then it cuts to the islands. The best I could say for this is that you can play as different characters like Robot Plankton, the main cast, Mr. Krabs, and Gary. The characters have cute nods to their episodes, such as Mr. Krabs using the fish head as a sword like a #1 fan. But that's where the positives end for me. The entire multiplayer is played from a top-down angle as you fight robots. 3 waves per island for 26 islands. That is 78 waves of robots non-stop. It's alright for maybe the first 5 waves, but then it just becomes a big clusterfuck as robots shoot projectiles at you, Squidward thunderbolts you, and you sometimes accidentally fall in goo and die automatically, yes automatically compared to the 3-strike system in the story, for the rest of it. It's not fun. I played this with my brother Fuse one time and we both regret it so much. It could have been a great multiplayer, but it becomes a chore to try to beat with no challenge either, because if you both die, you just start back at the wave you died at. This mode feels like such an afterthought. They just slapped everything in it and called it a day, which can be emphasized when you beat the multiplayer because Robot Squidward just sinks underwater and you look at a screen of your stats and then go back to the title screen. I didn't even try out every character. The only difference is Squidward and Robot Plankton shoot projectiles instead of directly hitting robots. What's even worse is that this lacks polish, because we ran into a problem where a robot was on a previous island and we couldn't reach him, so we died and tried it again. This mode could have been so much fun, but the lack of attention to making it a good challenge is noticeable. That alone is bad enough, but what makes this the worst part of Rehydrated is the fact that all the cut content went here. I may have missed an interview or two that mentioned this is how they were going to use it, but if you're advertising cut content restored in the game, actually restore it. This could have been such a chance to pave the way for developers of later remakes, but nope, you fucked it up with shit mode. Even if these levels and bosses were separate challenges to access on the menu after 100% completing the game, I would be okay with it, but this is not the way to go! Oh, and don't worry, we'll get to completion soon enough. I'm not even massively mad to the point that I'm screaming like I was at Kelp Forest and BFBB. I'm just so mad that it saddens me. What a wasted opportunity for potential. I will never go back to the multiplayer mode, and I don't think any of you should too. Congratulations, Horde Mode Shitpants. You are now the new Kelp Forest. Here's your medal. Now fuck off. Speaking of potential taken away, they did my boy Patrick dirty in this game. I talked earlier about how everyone controls. The parts that are bad are all associated with Patrick. First off, his throw ability has a lock-on still, but it's literally to everything, even the grounder platform ahead. I don't get why this was added because it makes the ability a slog to use sometimes. His throw to distant platforms was perfectly fine in BFBB without a lock-on system, so why in the world do we need one now? The fruit only makes it if it locks on, and sometimes it takes forever to get that distance just right. I can't stand it! What I can't stand even more though is stunning robots. In BFBB, you simply needed to do a belly flop and a robot was stunned. Easy stuff. For some reason in Rehydrated, however, his belly flop is designated to after a double jump, and if he does a singular jump, he does a cannonball. which stuns them too, but you wouldn't know because you need to be extremely close to the robots to pull it off. This is a problem because the belly flop has a shockwave that can stun enemies, but the cannonball doesn't, and you have to struggle to figure out how close you can get without destroying them. You can still try the belly flop, but double jumping against robots like the hammer is a struggle because, again, they are faster in attack time than the original game. Don't know what they were thinking with this, but it wasn't the right choice. This one isn't major, but since I'm on the topic of character changes, Sandy's swing is off-putting at first. You have to hold down the B button to stay in a swing, otherwise you fall off, compared to the original, where you press the button and only left when you jumped. I got used to it for the most part, but it still is a minor design error that could be avoided. As for design errors that could be avoided, the Murmur ball puzzle. It's still the same puzzle layout, don't worry. If anyone messes up, it's because they aren't willing to adjust to the bubble bowl when there's plenty of time to. And don't worry, there will be plenty of time to because the ball moves so slow! Like, holy shit, it never felt this slow in BFBB. You tell me. But it takes up a longer time in a puzzle that fills you with anxiety of fucking up. Now, the fans of the original game have to add the fear of fucking up because they misjudged the ball's speed. I failed the puzzle once because of this. It isn't as serious as the other faults beforehand. Remember, I'm talking from noticeable to nitpicks, but it still is a serious flaw that should be talked about because it made a notorious puzzle worse. Bungee jumping is also worse off compared to everything else, and this saddens me so much. It's a combination between the camera and the dive button, the camera being jank as all hell and sometimes not even working, and the dive button being polished and tightened to the point where it's utterly useless. The dive button in BFBB could be used loosely at any point during your descent to cheese your way through things like the Tiki Challenge during the Sea Needle portion of downtown Bikini Bottom, and this is okay because bungee jumping in any form is a quick side thing. It isn't like sliding where it's the main focus of a level, it's meant for fun. In Rehydrated, however, you get the best out of the dive at the very top instead of at any point. Otherwise, you fucked up. Depth perception during the Tiki Challenge especially can be tough, so cleaning up bungee jumping to the point where it's so tightly controlled doesn't help it. This is something so simple and enjoyable that could have been left alone easily and no one would care.
This next negative encompasses a bunch of smaller nitpicks that I have with the game, but I didn't exactly know how to talk about them. I do now, but it's going to sound weird no matter how I say it, and I need you guys to stay with me on this because you've heard this probably a bunch of times from different reviewers. The game sometimes feels like it has too much polish.
The game is great polish, and in some cases it needed to be done, don't get me wrong, but there are rare cases where too much is a downfall. For example, there's a segment in SpongeBob's Dream where you have to jump on a beach ball to get a golden spatula, and in BFBB it was easy to do. For some reason, precise jumping is bad because it just doesn't work well for something that shouldn't take more than 5 seconds to do. The beach ball in the library, different story. That definitely needed some touch-ups. But for a puzzle like this, it doesn't need it. Another example is the bubble bowl. It functions just as good as before, but sometimes if it hits a platform that's barely inches higher than the one you're on, it goes flying off and doesn't work. Why does a move like this that worked just fine before need that much precision? It's a ball of bubbles, it doesn't need to be serious. There are these moments throughout the game where the tight gameplay adds up to the point where I have to talk about it, because it makes puzzles and platforming moments that should be quick and painless a chore. The bungee jumping and beach ball puzzle are good examples of this. It isn't serious, it's just noticeable to the point where I have to try and find the words for you guys to get a fair review. At this point, these next few moments are just nitpicks that affect the charm of the game in regards to cutscenes and dialogue. Again, I'm happy the characters act more alive and look like themselves, but there are small moments where I feel like they could have taken the energy of the characters a different way that emulates what BFBB's models couldn't portray. For example, Mrs. Puff. I'm glad she put down the crack pipe, it isn't as anxiety riddled, but at the same time, anxiety is kind of her thing. She doesn't have to be like in BFBB, but she's the character model I'm most disappointed because it doesn't feel like her. She seems so snarky and a bitch during her cutscenes when she should be more anxious and awkward. It's her thing in the show. I'd be the same way if a sponge was trying to drive a fucking car. Here's a scene I'm sure we all know well. Here it is in BFBB, and once again in Rehydrated. You tell me which one you would want to see for the first time playing this game.
Don't ask questions you aren't prepared to handle the answer to.
Why do you want all that artwork?
Don't ask questions you aren't prepared to handle the answer to.
You have upgraded characters and motion to add charm, yet it's small moments like this that make me wonder if they could have really honed in on the characters and what made them great in the first place. Another cutscene for reference is Sandy yelling at Robot Patrick. In BFBB, she looks like she's going to go on a murderous rampage for Spongebob Bottom Pants, while in Rehydrated, she just looks like you took the last cookie from the cookie jar. Speaking of Robot Patrick, I fucking hate his design. He's the one robot that I was hoping they wouldn't change too much because he was great. Sure, he could use more touch-ups to look more robot and less Frankenstein's monster, but at the same time, he's in a genuinely creepy location that isn't in the show. He should look really creepy. They took it a bit too far though, and he looks more like a Lego toy than a robot. It's so lackluster compared to the redesigns of Robot Sandy and Robot SpongeBob. Again, One of those nitpicks of mine like the last problem that takes a little bit away from the charm. Not too much, but enough to be talked about as a fan of the GameCube game. And finally, I consider this one a nitpick because it's going to be patched in at some point, so I'm not worried: graphical glitches and pop-ins. I have seen and heard of people having really serious graphical glitches during cutscenes, but for me, the only serious one I had was in the opening when Patrick looked like that one episode where his mouth was stretched out because of all the hooks he had in it. It wasn't serious, and I had a good laugh out of it either way. The pop-ins, though, are something I questioned. Level textures and objects load in way too much, and it feels like the polish for graphics was rushed compared to everything else. I was okay with it all at first, but when it was after every cutscene and every entry into a level, I couldn't look the other way. Again, not a serious problem to me because I know it'll be patched in, and I'm also going to guess that that type of finishing touch wasn't done because of several months of progress lost to the pandemic that they figured could be patched to meet the release date, so I'll give it a small pass.
I'd say that just about wraps it up for the negatives that I have with the game, so why don't we just wrap up the review and talk about the endgame rewards. No, not again!
Yeah, after you collect every sock and golden spatula, you're just greeted with an updated version of the secret ending. Oh boy. I guess it's okay. I mean, I would have wanted something more, but Rehydrated is a faithful remake of BFBB, so I figured this would be involved. It's alright. Oh, but how about the movie theater? Surely there must be cool stuff here that was cut. It's still worth 40,000 shiny objects. Something's gotta give. Oh, it's just stills from in-game. Of stuff we've already seen. Multiple times to 100% the game.
It's like I'm watching The Last Jedi all over again.
Okay, what else is there? There's the multiplayer. The endgame is still disappointing. Honestly, I feared this would happen, but I'm not as upset as I thought it would be. Like I spoke about in my last review, it's about the journeys we go on with the yellow square guy along the way, not the end itself. And this is an exciting journey from start to finish. I enjoyed the game regardless of my gripes, and it's a worthy remake of a laid-back platformer from my childhood. However, it doesn't do anything drastically new from the original that will wow any new fans, but it's still a great time to be had, so pick it up if you've never played it before and are interested.
But we all knew I would love Rehydrated. It's a remake of BFBB. I love the original version, and I love this one too. The point of this review is to find out if Rehydrated is the definitive way to play Battle for Bikini Bottom, so with that said and done, it's review time. Do I think Rehydrated is the way to play Battle for Bikini Bottom, and should you pick it up? I would say pick it up, but not because it's better than the original. Hear me out on this.
I've been battling with the idea of if Rehydrated is better than the original version of the game throughout this entire process, and after some thinking, I've come to the conclusion that the game is the same quality as the original, which isn't a negative. In fact, that's an amazing thing because the game is fantastic in my eyes. This could have been better and still could be with the patches coming up to fix graphical issues and physics like the bubble bowl, but as it stands, it's the same. When the changes and upgrades are amazing, they are miles above BFBB and definitely elevate Rehydrated above it. However, the nitpicks with my knowledge of the OG game and small negatives begin to pile on, and then getting slapped in the face with a terrible multiplayer package and poor treatment of cut content, it just sort of counters the positives into an equilibrium. Again, I'm not saying it's a mediocre or bad game. If you watched my review of Battle for Bikini Bottom, you know how much I love the game, and the same is said for Rehydrated because it's essentially the same package. However, the changes Purple Lamp Studios made can be too much or not enough that take away what makes the original so memorable to the community. Maybe the future patches will chip away at my smaller problems that'll eventually slide Rehydrated as better than BFBB just barely. But as it stands now, it's the same quality as the game I know and love from 17 years ago, and that's all I care about. The only reason I'll recommend Rehydrated if you're a new player is because it's more accessible being on current gen consoles, and since you've never played the game before, it's still a lot of fun and you wouldn't know the difference. But if you could snag a working copy for PS2, Xbox, or GameCube, I'd say do it. If you can experience the original game for anything, let alone one based on a cartoon that's formed a loving fanbase and speedrunner community, I'd say do it. Both are fantastic, and Purple Lamp Studios should be proud of the work they did. They did outstanding for a small studio, let alone one that not only has to sell a remake of a game at the tail end of a generation of consoles, a time when gamers are focused on the future rather than the present, but during a pandemic, where I'm sure they've lost months of time that'll be slid in through patches regardless. Who knows? Maybe this will be better than the original with the fixes along the way. I know I'll still be playing it over and over again. This studio came out of nowhere, and I'm gonna follow them from now on. Whether they remake or make an entirely new SpongeBob game or a new IP, they have really impressed me.
Whether or not you can pick up the original version, I'd say pick up Rehydrated still. It's a fantastic variation, and the love and respect is clearly there despite anything critical that I might have to say. It's not as grand as Crash, Spyro, or Medieval's remakes, but Purple Lamp Studios clearly respects the source material, especially to the point where they brought on Shift, a speedrunner in the Battle for Bikini Bottom community, on for quality control of the game. Not a lot of companies are willing to do that. I'm just glad that they did Battle for Bikini Bottom justice, and I'm going to keep recommending this and the original game for as long as I live. This does bring up something I want to talk to you guys seriously about real quick. In a world where reviewers are being bombarded for hating on a childhood classic and not liking a game as much as we do, please try to be respectful. I know it's hard, especially with some genuinely bad reviews out there. Believe me, I'm not excusing those. In fact, I say call them out if you can. I don't need to tell you which ones in regards to Rehydrated are genuinely bad reviews. You've probably already seen them at this point. But for the majority of reviewers out there that bring up fair points and don't like the game as much or just don't like the game at all, please try to be respectful. I mean, other than me, because, hi, self-deprecation here. You can hate on me all you want. The world right now is so full of hate and disrespect. I don't want another reason that we hate each other to be over something trivial like video games. Whether it's here in the comments or in somebody else's review, try to be respectful about your opinions if it's a fair review. There's no need for it. What I'm trying to say is, be a ball of love like SpongeBob. Oh yeah, that reminds me, I haven't talked about SpongeBob yet. I still hate SpongeBob! That's going to be it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning into the review, and I hope you stick around for more of the game dimension. Have you picked up Rehydrated yet? Is there something that I missed positive or negative about the game that is worth noting in the review? Do you agree with me, though, and think it's the same quality as the original? Or do you think it's better or worse than it? Let me know in the comments down below. Be sure to like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to the Game Dimension for more. I also have my social media in the description if you want to see how messed up my life is. I'll see you guys next time for either Paper Mario the Origami King or Maneater. I kind of feel bad, honestly. I keep pushing poor Maneater aside, but this summer is so jam-packed that I haven't even opened this game yet. But rest assured, we will get to it by the end of the summer. And I can also assure you that whether it's Paper Mario or this game, they're both beatable in under 20 hours. Just like Rehydrated is.